This was the aircraft which in World War II was considered the identity of Britain. The Supermarine Spitfire was an excellent fighter plane, which because of its speed and agility became the pilot's favorite, and for the public, the war-winning machine. But in reality, this plane was the victim of a very big problem. The problem was that the plane's engine would shut down at exactly the moment when it was engaged in a dogfight with a German pilot, especially when it was made to dive downwards. On the other hand, in the German Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt 109 fighter plane, there was no such problem. Because of this, the German pilots often dominated the British pilots during war. Britain won the Battle of Britain with great difficulty, and the biggest reason for that was this problem of the Spitfire's engine. If in the remaining World War II, Britain wanted a clear victory, then for that it was very necessary to solve this strange problem of the Spitfire. They put in their utmost effort. Big engineering firms also tried, but this problem of the Spitfire could not be solved by anyone. At last, a solution was found, and that too was discovered by a person from where no one had expected. A woman, Beatrice Shilling. What did this woman do with the Spitfire that today she is considered by the Allies to be responsible for winning World War II? Welcome once again, viewers. The problem of the Spitfire's Rolls Royce Merlin engine first appeared in 1938. At that time, this problem was not considered so big because before World War II, pilots did not do much diving. But in 1940, when the Battle of Britain was at its peak, then this was not just a technical problem, but had become a matter of survival. An even bigger problem was that before World War II, the British government had already produced more than 20,000 Spitfires. That means all these planes had the same problem because all of them had the Rolls Royce Merlin engine installed. And then the seriousness of the matter was realized when the British found out that the Royal Air Force, that is RAF, besides Spitfire, the other fighter planes they had like Hawker Hurricane and Bolton Paul Defiant also had the same Rolls Royce Merlin engine installed. Now with the heat of World War II, and on top of that, the Allies' biggest force being forced to fight with planes with defective engines. In 1940, during World War II, Nazi Germany was facing France and Britain. During this time, when the Germans brought their Messerschmitt 109 into the Allies' area, then to counter them, the RAF's Spitfires would go. To avoid each other's bullets, the pilots would use advanced maneuvers such as suddenly diving, or suddenly pulling the aircraft up. This was a very common thing in World War II. Whereas planes could fight for hours performing such maneuvers, sometimes diving down to avoid enemy bullets, sometimes suddenly nosing up to bring the other plane into aim and fire. Now, in such life-and-death dogfights, if someone's engine shuts down, then what would happen to him? Luckily, in the Battle of Britain, British pilots had the home court advantage, meaning their fuel supply was nearby and they could fight for many hours. On the other hand, the German pilots first had to cross the English Channel, then fight, and after that return to their base for refueling. This was a disadvantage for the German pilots. Maybe that is why they could not even compete with the defective Spitfires. The Battle of Britain ended, but World War II was still not over. This strange problem in the Spitfire especially appeared when it nosedived. When an aircraft starts rapidly falling downwards in free fall, then anything not firmly fixed, like the blood running in the pilot's bodies and the fuel present in the engine's carburetor, gravity no longer pulls it down, but instead it goes upwards. Unfortunately, in the Rolls Royce Merlin engine's carburetor, the fuel outlets were downward. So, when the plane nosedived rapidly, the fuel present in the carburetor went upwards. That is away from the outlets. During this time, the engine did not get fuel, because of which either the plane's engine would shut down, or it would start sputtering, only until it became straight again. To solve this problem, the best minds in the world at that time were assigned this task, including Cyril Lovesey of Rolls-Royce and A.D. Fisher of the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Both came up with very clever technical solutions, but both completely failed. On the contrary, because of their solutions, a new problem also arose in the aircraft. To understand this problem, it was necessary to have deep knowledge of the inside of the engine. That is why it was very surprising that in 1940, its final and best solution was given by a woman whom we know today as Beatrice Shilling. When in 1938 the Spitfire's production test flights were happening, at the same time a woman named Beatrice Shilling rebuilt and tested her favorite machine again, a 490cc Norton motorcycle. This was the same bike on which she became the fastest woman to ride a motorcycle on the Brooklands racetrack. Shilling was an amazing racer, but even more amazing as an engineer. She had a passion for motorcycles since childhood. Around 1919, when Beatrice was only 10 years old, she saw her sisters going on cycle trips, and she was always left behind. That's why she decided that she would save money to buy a motorcycle. At 14 years old, she achieved her goal by buying a 2-stroke Royal Enfield. Slowly, she started fixing her bike's problems herself, and soon she became capable of dismantling the bike completely and reassembling it. By the time she was 15, she had decided that engineering would be her real career. But the problem was that now it was the era of 1924, and at that time, society did not even imagine girls becoming engineers. With the help of the Women's Engineering Society in October 1929, Beatrice took admission in the Victoria University of Manchester's Department of Electrical Engineering, where never before had any girl been admitted. Later, she also got the chance to take classes in thermodynamics and mechanical engineering, which was her real interest. She was not only an engineer, but also a woman who raced against men at the Brooklands track. And that was only possible because she had made some modifications in her 490cc Norton motorcycle's carburetor, because of which its pickup had increased immensely. At that time, even she did not realize, but this capability of hers during World War II was going to solve the biggest problem of Spitfire and Hurricane fighters. Before World War II, Shilling had already spent 3 years working at the Royal Aircraft Establishment. At first, her job was only to write technical documentation. But in November 1939, after several promotions, Beatrice Shilling had reached the position of technical officer, and now her responsibility was the research and development work of carburetors. When the engineers of Rolls Royce failed to solve the Spitfire's problem, then Shilling asked the authorities for permission to fix this problem. At first, everyone underestimated her because she was a woman, but surprisingly Shilling in only a few days not only solved the problem, but the authorities seeing the solution started laughing at themselves. But after all, what had she done? Shilling had simply designed a small brass restrictor with a hole of a special diameter, and then by fitting that plate into the carburetor, the plane's problem was fixed to a large extent. The biggest advantage of this solution was that this brass plate could be fitted into the plane while standing on the ground, meaning it was not very time-consuming either. Now the biggest problem left was to go to different bases and install this into Spitfires. For this work too, Shilling used her Norton, and by going to different bases, installed this solution into Spitfires and Hurricane fighters. Shilling's solution was so successful that it was given the name Miss Shilling's Orifice. This small plate did not completely, but to a large extent, fix the pilot's biggest problem. Later, Shilling designed an entirely new carburetor for the Rolls Royce Merlin and solved this problem once and for all. After winning World War II, the pilots gave all the credit to Shilling's capability. Finally, in return for her hard work, she was honored with the Order of the British Empire, OBE. After World War II, instead of leaving engineering, Shilling started working on new and advanced military projects. By 1950, her work had spread to new fields like rocketry, ramjets, and guided weapons. In 1955, Shilling was made the Senior Principal Scientific Officer of the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Beatrice Shilling was not just a mechanic or engineer. She was an extraordinary character who was opening new doors for women in engineering. Even today, it is well acknowledged that if in World War II, Shilling had not been there, then perhaps the map of the world would not have been the same as it looks today. We hope you will also like and share this video. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next fantastic video.